Great to be here. My name is Matthew Skelton. I really love the whole concept of community stack. I have to say, Ethan and I were chatting a couple of years ago, and it's great to see it like emerging into this amazing force for good. So it's super great to be here. We're happy to sponsor it. Come and see our stand later, Conflux over here. My colleagues two of them in the blue t-shirts and one in the blue shirt. I'd like to share some experience and insights about how Team Topologies, the book that I co-authored that was published originally in 2019, how Team Topologies can act as the infrastructure for agency with humans and agency with AI, because this is the point in time right now, middle of 2026, when we need to be engaging with exactly these kind of questions. And this is a question I'd like to try and answer, maybe not fully, but partly today. The question is, how should we organize AI agents and humans for effective value delivery? This is the question I think most leaders should be asking themselves. It turns out that many leaders are not asking the question in exactly that way. They're just saying, how can we burn more tokens? But anyway, it turns out that organizations are already organized for bounded agency in humans are well suited to adopting AI effectively and humanely. And that is very important to me, and this is what I want to explore today. And I think this is something, my suggestion is this something that is worth thinking about. And a focus on bounded agency, I'll explain that later, but a focus on bounded agency clarifies the mission and focus up and down and across the organization. Effectively, what value are we providing and to whom? I've just noticed there's an error in that slide. I'll have to fix it later. What value are we providing and to whom? That question, correctly phrased without the typo, is a really important diagnostic question. What value are you providing and to whom? Across the entire organization, externally, internally. It ends up shining a spotlight on purpose and a whole bunch of other things, to be honest. And we'll start to uncover some of that a little bit later. So we work with senior leaders in some of the biggest organizations in the world. Middle of 2026, what do leaders need? They need focused behavioral levers to enable them to shape how behaviors emerge in the organization. They need proven fast flow techniques from Team Topologies and DevOps and all of this good stuff. They need active innovation detection and diffusion. I'll come to that later. We also need an engaging dynamic of cross-group sharing and standards uplift. In other words, thinking about what standards we want and then helping the organization to adopt them. And part of how we do that is via high-quality content infrastructure, content for humans, content for LLM-based AI systems. This is literally what people are asking us. So this is what we're working towards. So as Ethan said, my name is Matthew Skelton. I'm the co-author of the book Team Topologies. We have one copy on the stand. I believe, Ethan, are there 10 copies around? I think there's 10 copies here. I'm not sure how they're over there. They're towards there. I think there might be some kind of book signing thing later, but maybe Ethan can clarify that later on. I'm happy to sign the books if people want it. You don't have to. The second edition of the Team Topologies book came out in September 2025, so last year. There's 10 really powerful case studies from all continents in the world apart from Antarctica. The penguins are a bit busy. If you've not seen this book, this is the way to think about it. Given the need for ongoing stewardship of long-lived services, how can we realistically arrange the flow of value to be rapid, safe, and sustainable? That's effectively the entire book in a single sentence. And it anticipates and acknowledges that technology is part of the mix, but it's not fundamentally about technology, at least not about technology alone. Here's a really interesting phrase or statement from Stuart Wintertier, who's an AI product advisor to private equity companies and is the author of a book called Unhyped. I bought my copy last week. in a LinkedIn post last year, we were discussing a bunch of things, but from Stuart's perspective, he's saying Team Topologies offers something agentic AI desperately needs but cannot invent on its own. Clear boundaries, stable interfaces, aligned domains, a culture of collaborative ownership. So Team Topologies is the infrastructure for agency itself. That's where that phrase from the talk title today came from. So I'm now working with Stuart on a bunch of things through Conflux. Like leadership-focused roundtables and things like that. But I think it's a really interesting phrasing. Someone coming from an AI advisory perspective, seeing how we can use these Team Topologies principles that we wrote in 2018, that were based on stuff from the DevOps movement starting in about 2008, that was all human-centric, right? But because we wrote it in a particular way, the principles are applicable to the next phase of kind of digital business automation, which is this kind of AI wave at the moment. What do we mean by infrastructure for agency then? It's rules, principles, guardrails that empower groups of humans and AI agents to be effective stewards of value flow. That's how I see it. That's my specific take on this. We've been doing work in this kind of space around in the software delivery area, but also charity fundraising, marketing, accounting, legal services. We've been applying the Team Topologies ideas and these principles of bounded agency to lots of different domains. All of these things are knowledge work. We're in a very interesting position as people in working in kind of digital systems, software and infrastructure, in that since, let's say, the year 2000, we increasingly, with these kind of skills, I include myself in this is my background, we have been forced to discover the patterns that work really well before anyone else in knowledge work, effectively, because our stuff has been automated before any other knowledge work has been automated. So the patterns particularly from software engineering, the patterns from the DevOps movement in the last 20 years, whatever, we're in an amazing position where we can apply these to the entire knowledge work part of the organization. So we've got a strong responsibility, but a great opportunity to bring our awareness and wisdom to pretty much the entire rest of the organization, which is kind of scary and exciting at the same time. Why do 80% of firms report no benefit from AI? That's from an article from the Register. How does the COO, the Chief Operating Officer, sleep soundly at night with 10,000 AI agents operating 24/7? The answer is not pass the buck to the CIO. That's the wrong answer, okay? Someone actually said that anyway. How can the Chief Information Security Officer reason about security risks from agentic AI? That's genuinely a question that is being asked at board level. How can we align costs to value streams for simpler executive board reporting? Same kind of question that's been asked. These are genuine questions that people at the exec level are grappling with, and we, coming from an engineering background, have an opportunity to help answer if we're going to remain relevant and not be pushed to the side. To help us with that, we can ask, what key principles has the IT or the software industry learned since around 1998, or maybe a little bit before? And I'm going to go through those key principles I think we can bring to the rest of the organization. But the first thing is, this should not be a technology-first initiative. We shouldn't be going all in on AI first. Same as cloud first, like 10 years, 15 years ago, whatever. Like, it's not about the technology. That will end up leading to distrust from the C-suite, and then it'll be seen as a failed initiative. There's an opportunity to do things a different way, and that's starting with known success factors for value delivery with humans. Start with the outcomes. Don't start with the technology. Start with the outcomes that you want from a business perspective. It sounds straightforward, but it's surprising, maybe, how often groups of people do not think about the outcomes that they want from applying a thing, technology, new ways of working, whatever. Start with the outcomes. What do we want to achieve? And then there's 5 additional things which I think are really, really important in terms of value flow in knowledge work. I'll go through these in a minute. The first one is avoiding handoffs. Don't do a little bit of work and then hand it to another team to do a bit more work and then hand it to another team to do a bit more work. Can we get end-to-end stewardship of a value flow instead? Because at handoffs, we lose context, it ends up being very, very slow. And AI is shining a big spotlight on any kind of process or value flow which is slow. We need to make sure that the incentives are aligned for value delivery. So you don't have people who are incentivized to produce loads of code or produce loads of marketing reports or produce loads of charts. Like, what's the actual incentive? Whether it's a genuine financial incentive encoded in their bonus scheme, or whether it's like their inferred incentive based on what people in the organization tell them. Like, what are the actual incentives that are present in the organization now? It's really important to protect the fidelity of concepts. So we've got an idea over here. It's called an order. There's another thing over here in this part of the organization that's called an order. Are they the same thing? An LLM can't really tell the difference. If we bring those two things together and smoosh together those two different concepts, we're in a problem. The human version of that 20 years ago was a human saying, I've got an order in this database table, and I've got an order over here. Let's just bring it into the same database, we'll be fine. Like, we need to, if those two concepts of order are actually logically different, we need to protect that. And that's where things like domain-driven design come in. Who's a fan of DDD? One or two. First rule of DDD Club? Don't mention DDD, it's too scary. But like, techniques like domain-driven design are really genuinely, so it was invented, published 2003, 2004, genuinely like, almost like a superpower in the age of LLM-based kind of information munging. We need to think about stewardship boundaries that are cognitively scoped. In other words, in the age, so for humans, like, we're not being asked to look after something that's more than we can genuinely comprehend. In the case of AI systems, there's plenty of evidence now that more focused, like small language models, perform better at domain-specific tasks and so on. So that's the equivalent, and we'll look at that a little bit later. We also, though, because of the speed of change in technology and markets and regulation and everything else, we need to actively diffuse learning and innovation across the organization. We can't just allow pockets of stuff to happen randomly. We need to have a curated approach to finding the good stuff and sharing it and creating pillars of, the kind of magnets of, for behavior. And we'll go into that a little bit later on. So these are the 5 things I genuinely think. You'll notice there's nothing about technology in there, because this is fundamentally about how to do knowledge work effectively. But we, as engineers, like I said, we've discovered this stuff as an industry well ahead of most of the other knowledge work disciplines. So we're in an amazing position to be able to really set the scene and enable truly effective organizations when we're thinking about using AI in this space. I'm trying to answer those tricky C-suite questions. There's 4 things I want to zoom into today. There's definitely other dimensions that are not listed here, but these 4 things I want to zoom in today. Trust in teams and AI is founded on bounded agency that provides clarity. The second one is Team Topologies provides vital patterns and principles for establishing that agency. Third thing is something to avoid, which is unbounded access to data and other resources. And then finally, we need to find out ways to empower teams of humans to be effective stewards of, it says here AI, but effectively it's effective stewards of ways of working and value flow. So that's the first concept then, that trust in teams and AI is founded on bounded agency that provides clarity. One of the ways in which leaders can trust human teams is because there's a clear scope, there's a clear focus of what that team's doing, and we know that therefore they don't have access to go and change the data over here or to go and call that API over there. We can reason about the possible things that are going to go wrong, and we need to apply the same approach in an AI context as well. The clear team purpose and remit enables organisational observability. Who's been working in like software and IT cloud observability? We can use those skills to spread out and across the entire organisation that's doing knowledge work. Same concept around observability, but now a huge remit, 10 times bigger than the previous remit. There's tools emerging. like Teamform and TeamOS that you might call organizational observability. These are looking at Slack, Jira, they're looking at patterns of communication, they're scraping metadata from a bunch of places and inferring that this team over here is blocked on this team over here, or that there's a unclear ownership boundary between these two areas over here, or all this kind of stuff here, and it's really interesting. These two particular tools use Team Topologies principles explicitly, but it's a kind of emerging discipline. Whether it ends up being called organizational observability or something different, I'm not sure, but it's definitely happening. And again, like there's an opportunity to get involved in that kind of emerging discipline, that instead of it being about how well is this like software application running in the cloud, it's suddenly how well are workflows running across like the entire organization. Amanda Lutcher-Graham is head of AI at a large US corporation, and she was saying recently on LinkedIn, AI governance has to live in system architecture to scale. That's the role for the architects. Who are the architects here today? Anyone who identifies as an architect openly, brave? So if you're building visibility into what's running, encoding risk appetite in an enforceable threshold, and giving your agents identities and traceability, you're probably ahead of where most organizations are today. Like we can take the observability principles, apply it to AI agents, and suddenly we're actually bringing together a really powerful set of primitives and principles for making an organization, the entire knowledge work part of the organization, run really effectively. The second point I want to make is that Team Topologies is providing vital patterns and principles for establishing that kind of agency. This is how I anchor my thinking about Team Topologies in particular. It's zoomed into this context of needing to provide ongoing stewardship of long-lived value streams, what we call stream-aligned teams. Teams aligned to the stream of value. Turns out most organizations don't think about doing work in that way. They think about work in functional silos. So there's a huge amount of opportunity to help organizations switch to a way of working which has identified what the value provided is and aligned teams to that. In the DevOps world, if you like, which is kind of where the Team Topologies ideas can be emerged from, that stuff's been understood for quite a long time, like 15, 20 years, but maybe has only been around in a small pocket. We're now thinking about reshaping stewardship boundaries across the entire organization. Tom Paperkamp works for one of the major universities in the Netherlands, and he's saying the organizations poised to win with agentic AI are not necessarily those with the most advanced models, but those whose operating models are already built for trust, clarity, and bounded autonomy. Team Topologies provides a blueprint for creating the bounded autonomy and clear interfaces that agents need to thrive. So we can take the ideas from Team Topologies and repurpose them into kind of an agentic thing or some sort of combination of both. We don't have to invent anything new because we've got the principles already. Thinking about boundaries around agency. Third point, we need to avoid unbounded access to data and other resources by AI tools and agents. We've seen plenty of examples of catastrophic failures where people have used Claude Code or something to go and do a load of, I've just created this brand new thing and it does all this whiz-bang stuff. And then Claude Code decided to delete the entire production database and no backups. And I think removed the backups as well or something like this recently. It's like, okay, great, well done there. That's certainly one way to find out pretty quickly. So like, who's seen this? I'm not going to ask this about your current organization. Who's seen some reports of an organization saying just grant access to all data stores and APIs for the agentic AI? Has anyone seen this? Has anyone been close to an edict that says just open it all up and let the AI do everything? Wow, everyone either no one wants to admit it because you're too embarrassed, or you all work for really switched on organizations. That's really good. We wouldn't do this with humans, but for very good reason, because then it would feel like it would feel catastrophic. It'd be very difficult to reason about what would happen if we just allowed everyone admin access to everything. Well, it's very straightforward to reason. It would be a catastrophe, right? Everything would fall over. This is actually, even if you don't believe me, go and have a look at the OWASP Gen AI patterns. The LLM 06 from 2025 is called excessive agency from OWASP. Excessive agency this is the, what does OWASP stand for again? The online working security practices. It's the people who know about security in the world, right? Excessive agency can lead to a broad range of impacts across the confidentiality, integrity, and availability spectrum. That means it's really chuffing bad. Don't do it. Security bound, here's a really important point which deserves an entire talk on its own. But security boundaries, if they're done well, protect both data and domain fidelity. They help to make sure that this version of order doesn't get mooshed up with this version of order. Security boundaries are a good thing if we put them in the right place. We've got team cognitive load as a design principle. That's a key aspect of the Team Topologies book. The specific version the interpretation we took in the original book maybe could do with a bit of refinement, but anyway, as a principle, I think it really stands. There's someone here, Razi Al-Kazem, who's Director of Product Engineering at a Silicon Valley company called Verata. He's actually been using the Team Topologies ideas in an agentic AI context, like really testing them out. And he's saying a context window is the cognitive load boundary of an AI system. Exceed it and the agent starts forgetting, it loses coherence, it hallucinates connections that don't exist and misses connections that do. This means that every principle Team Topologies teaches about managing cognitive load for human teams maps directly onto designing effective agent architectures. Like, clearly I didn't know about agentic AI when I wrote the book because it didn't exist. The point being, because in the book we zoomed into like the fundamental principles, the people like Razi are using this directly in proper production workloads to help them reason about and put in place effective kind of governance and traceability and things like this, which is amazing to see. And there'll no doubt be more of this stuff coming out in the next few years. So this is not a brag. This is more about this is a suggestion to help navigate kind of AI adoption in whichever form it's coming inside your organization. Don't think we have to invent a load of things. There's literally a book and associated materials that are going to help you navigate that. Because it's been happening with human teams for several years, we could apply the same thing to AI as well. So the Team Topologies book has got concepts around team types and team interaction modes, but what we found is it's really valuable to use them as a diagnostic language. By having that language and awareness in place, we can then spot things that are going wrong in the organization or spot things that are less effective in the organization. Veronica Stewart is product operations leader and head of AI enablement at a big US corporation. She's talking about the need for visibility. So as AI accelerates, we need visibility into things like domain boundaries, ownership clarity, cross-team dependencies, platform bottlenecks, architectural coupling. The clearer the system is for humans, the more effectively AI can operate within it. We're using the same principles as have been evolved in the last, 20, 30 years. We're not throwing them away. We are zooming into, doubling down on the principles that actually work for rapid value flow. And we're applying that to AI in whichever form AI is there. However, we need something else too. Let's say you've got your organization, you've used Team Topologies, you've got an organization that looks a little bit like this, you've got multiple different value flows in yellow, you've got something that you might call a platform in blue, and there's value flows inside there, all good. If you take this stuff to the extreme, you end up with some pockets of maybe good approaches or practices across the organization, but in the worst case, it's actually duplication of effort. So we worked with international. We worked with a large bank, and I think they had 73 different AI initiatives across the organization, which were not connected. That's just financially wasteful. There's no value in that. That's genuinely the CFO will come down and say, "What are you doing, guys? Like, this is just not acceptable. It's literally wasting money for no reward." We need to actively diffuse knowledge across the organization. We need to choose what we want to curate, which practices are good, which approaches are good, which techniques are good, which ways of prompting are good, whatever it is, and actively diffuse that across the organization. So active diffusion of knowledge across team boundaries. Imagine a little room stick like this, but a fan behind it, so it's blowing it across the room so everyone can smell it, if it's a nice smell. Lots of these kind of things have been happening historically in organizations that are switched on. Conferences like the one today, but internally focused. Blogs, lunch and learn, communities of practice, guilds and so on. Lots of these things have always happened in a kind of human delivery context. Many times they're not particularly joined up. There often might be a little like a side of desk initiative and so on, which can be fine. That's up to a point. But there's an opportunity to pull these together into an approach which is much more directed and curated and has some really, really valuable side effects. The reason why we need to zoom into these is, like I mentioned before, the technology is changing so rapidly. The business context is changing very, very rapidly. The regulation is changing very rapidly, and so on and so on. And they're to a degree interconnected. So we need to sort of harness these into an approach which is much more curated and directed. Handily, I have wrote another book called Internal Tech Conferences. So this came out in early 2019. Now this is based purely on kind of like humans doing software delivery or technology, right? Because it's, again, before AI. Turns out a lot of this stuff in here can also be super helpful. There's a key concept I want to share. It's called an Innovation and Practices Enabling Team. So enabling team is a concept from Team Topologies, a group of experts who are there to uplift the skills and capabilities in other teams. But this is specifically focused on finding good innovation and finding good practices across the organization, shining a spotlight on it, helping the teams that are doing that thing to talk about it in a way which is compelling and which identifies the business value of that thing. Because in many cases, there'll be a team over here that's doing something with data or AI or UX or who knows what, research, but they might not have the skills to be able to articulate the value of that thing in a way which is interesting and compelling and so on for other people. So what we're trying to do is zoom into, go and find the stuff that's happening across the organization, but spotlight the things that we want to see more of. So that particular technique over there, that's amazing. That's the way we want to visualize data. This technique over here, not so much. We won't actually spotlight it. We won't necessarily stop it, but we're not going to spotlight it. We're going to spotlight this thing. We're creating behavioral magnets across the organization. The next slide is very scary. Don't worry. The stuff is happening on the timeline across the middle. Lots of different things are happening. The Innovation and Practices Enabling Team is finding these things. So this black square is, there's an interesting thing happened over here. Let's help that team or that group to talk about it. Let's go zoom into the detail. We might help them to write some slides. We might help them to understand how to do a presentation, whatever. We're actually building skills across the organization for humans, but what we're also doing is curating a set of really effective ways of working here in the middle that act like a magnet, because we cannot afford to sort of allow a good practice up here just to sit up there. If that's a really good way of working with the technology or the regulation, we have to curate it as quickly as possible and bring it in here and then make it, kind of productionize it or make it easier to understand for other teams to use as well. Because there's a genuine financial imperative to do this. The second thing that pops out of this is that because we're curating we're being very disciplined at curating the things we want to see, all of these good practices here turn into candidates for context into any kind of AI-based system that we're using to run our organization. So Silicon Valley is now looking for startups that produce software that's going to run the entire organization based on AI agents, whatever. So something like this is coming down the line. If we're being much more deliberate and intentional about what the behaviors and techniques and things that we want to see, the understanding of that stuff is both human context and it's LLM-based AI context that we can then ingest into, and organizations are doing this already. I'm sure there's some people here who you've started to see that. But this is the intentional approach to that. This is the operationalized approach to that shaping of behavior and kind of AI context. So we've done some of this stuff in the past. This was 2021. This is before AI agents. But this seeking out and championing good practices helped the big Canadian telco TELUS to shift their thinking around how they innovate and share success. When I was running internal conferences at an organization in the UK back in like 2012-ish, we ran a few of these internal events, and the CEO stood up after, say, the 5th event and said, this initiative around internal conferences has been the single most effective thing to align business and technology that I've seen in this organization. Now, the organization was doing about 150 million revenue at the time. Any lack of alignment could potentially have cost, what, 10% of that revenue, maybe? 15 million? We probably saved the organization 5, 10, 15 million because the organization was better aligned between business and technology. And so there's a real opportunity for us, because we understand systems, I mean, we can sort of start to understand how things need to work together. There's an opportunity for us to provide outsized business value to the rest of the organization by doing things like, say, look, here's how the technology actually works, deliberately pairing up with, say, head of sales and head of data, or it could be, head of AI plus someone from marketing or legal, and deliberately describing how a particular approach to doing a thing with technology has helped in a non-technology area. So deliberately bridging technology and non-technology. There's a huge opportunity to show real kind of leadership and value inside the organization by doing things in a particular way. JP Morgan are doing this at massive scale. So Derek Waldron, Chief Analytics Officer at JP Morgan Chase, is talking about how they introduced kind of LLMs inside. It was many, many thousands of people. I think 40,000 people, something like this. And he was saying, we didn't mandate the use of the LLM suite by anybody. Instead, we used an opt-in approach. There was a little bit of fear of missing out, and it's a social dynamic that helped create a culture of adoption. They're doing this at massive, massive scale. It's not just a little thing we tinker around with startups. This is huge. Okay, they've got plenty of money to fund it, but the point being is it's not just a small scale thing. This is huge. So friendly FOMO is the idea to take away from this. How do you create friendly fear of missing out? Like, here's an approach which really, really works. That's amazing. I want to do that. Or, ooh, that team over there, they got real recognition for how they did a thing which helped the legal department to process contracts more quickly. I want to get recognition for that stuff too. That kind of friendly FOMO. We don't want actual fear, but friendly FOMO is fine. So yeah, leaders need a whole bunch of things like this. And the thing we just talked about here is innovation, detection, and diffusion. An engaging dynamic across group sharing and standards uplift. We can't afford pockets of people to be drifting in techniques and awareness that is out of date. We have to make almost like a continuous refreshing of context, human context and AI context, on an ongoing basis. This is the first conference that sees this new website. So Adapts Together is an approach that we've pulled together at Conflux over the last, many years. The website went live literally last night, so I pressed play on it about 10 to midnight in time for this conference today. So Adapt Together is an approach. We're writing a book about it at the moment. The book will be published by the same publisher as Team Topologies, which is IT Revolution. I'm writing it with Renee Hawkins, my colleague, who's got a super huge amount of experience. She was the Chief Operating Officer at ThoughtWorks UK for many years, but she got experience in HR, originally in mechanical engineering, a bunch of other things too. We're bringing together the kind of if you like, technology and organizational side with her operational, financial, HR capability skills side for a really vital perspective that leaders are asking for. If you're interested in anything around that or anything else, come to the stand, have a chat. You're literally the first people to see this stuff live. So exciting. My suggestion is that you take this question and ask that inside your organization. How should we organize AI agents and humans for effective value delivery? And take some of the learning and principles from today to help navigate it. Start with outcomes. Avoid handoffs, align incentives, protect fidelity of concepts, think about stewardship that's cognitively scoped, and then make sure you're actively diffusing learning and innovation, refreshing context on a continuous basis. These things and more, the things we talked about, it's not just these things, but it's more than that. There's lots of conversations on LinkedIn around this stuff at the moment. I mean, some people don't like LinkedIn, that's fine, I totally get it. It's a bit of a zoo, but there are genuinely some useful conversation happening on LinkedIn as well. Organizations that are already organized for bounded agency and humans are well suited to adopting AI effectively and humanely. I think that's the main takeaway. But to be able to do that, and to be able to keep up to date with effective practices and ways of working and so on, we've got that need to actively diffuse knowledge across the organization. So this combination of the stuff in Team Topologies for focusing on bounded agency, plus the innovation detection, diffusion, the cross-group sharing, and the continuous context refresh is coming from Adapt Together. The book, Adapt Together, should get published round about this time next year, maybe slightly sooner, but we'll be starting to put out things via the website and channels and things before then. So give us a follow, sign up, and you'll be the first to hear. I genuinely think we can actually do this. We've got the skills and techniques and perspective to be able to make this kind of stuff happen. But it's not about throwing things away, it's about doubling down on what already works, making it much more intentional. Thank you. Looking forward to conversations.